Hello guys, welcome to a new video, and today we're continuing with the series of should you play this healer, and today we're looking at Restoration Druid. Now, disclaimer, if you want to save yourself a couple of minutes, overall the amount of changes that are happening to Resto Druid and Shadowlands are not really overwhelming. There is a couple of new abilities, a couple of new talents, more utility, because Resto Druids need more utility. But overall there isn't crazy gameplay changes coming, especially when you compare it to someone like a Holy Paladin. But if you want to check out the spell changes, if you want to check out the talents, and if you want to hear my opinions about where Resto Druid is heading in Shadowlands and whether it's fun in raids or mythic plus content, let's go and get started. So first of all, you'll notice that again everything looks somewhat similar. There isn't a huge amount of talent changes. We'll talk about the Covenants, we'll talk about some of the Legendaries, and we'll talk about some of the builds that are emerging. But generally speaking, keep in mind that spells and balancing is still happening, even though Shadowlands is coming out relatively soon, so anything can change. And by no means this is the best talent build or whatsoever, it's just something that I've been testing out. So overall, in terms of changes, you will notice that there is a new huge, and this is a big one, this is for all druids, you're getting Stampeding Roar, and I feel this is going to be relatively strong, especially in raid content where, again, you're going to be competing with Resto Shaman's Wind Rush kind of totem as well, so you're bringing more utility. On top of that, we're going into the raid utility route again, and that is Innervate. So now Innervate is going to be a little bit different. You'll notice the Innervate infuses the friendly healer with energy, allowing them to cast spells without spending any mana for 12 seconds. If cast on somebody else, you gain the effect at 50% effectiveness. Now this is kind of ridiculous in my eyes because it should be reversed. You should get 100% of the Innervate effect, and you should be giving 50% to a person or an ally. But instead, if you cast it on your friendly healer who needs, let's say, Discipline Priest, they need a bit of help with the mana in raids, you cast Innervate on them and you get 50% of the effectiveness, which I feel is additional utility, especially when you combine it with Stampeding Roar. But again, it feels kind of weird that I'm not getting the full bonus of it. So this is what I feel Blizzard tried to be like, hey, let's try and increase the uniqueness or give some sort of utility to Resto Druids in raid situations, because they really lack that. So let's look at other changes that I feel are quite important. I feel the most important change is going to be Swiftmend change, and this is going to be something that you're going to notice straight off the bat. Swiftmend is not castable at this given point. I can't cast Swiftmend at all, because Swiftmend requires Regrowth Hot, Wild Growth Hot, or Rejuvenation to heal a person, which is a little bit awkward because if you have Life Bloom on yourself and you kind of see it on your bars, you still can't cast it. If you have Spring Blossoms Hot on it and you see it on your bars, you still can't cast Swiftmend. You need to have Rejuvenation, Wild Growth, or Regrowth Hot in order to do it. So if you have it, it's going to consume it and you'll be able to cast it. Now, the cooldown has been reduced and now it's only 15 seconds. Because of this, there is a high chance, and this is the biggest change for Resto Druids that came about, Soul of the Forest might make a comeback, because Swiftmend is only 15 seconds. So all of a sudden, I am a huge fan of Soul of the Forest because I quite frankly, I feel Cultivation, again, in Mythic Plus, Cultivation was the best in BFA, but generally speaking, it is very passive and it doesn't really change the gameplay. Incarnation Tree of Life was probably your go-to in raids in BFA, and again, it's a cooldown, but I feel Soul of the Forest is a lot more engaging. Whether it's going to make a comeback, I don't know, but there is a chance of it, and I really, really hope so, because I feel that Resto Druid, especially in raid situations, could use a new mechanic to deal with, and I feel Soul of the Forest making a comeback could be very, very interesting, and I'd love to hear your opinion about this. Do you want Soul of the Forest to make a comeback? I really want to hear your opinion. Outside of that, you get a new talent, Nourish, or this used to be a PvP talent, and heals a friendly target for a certain amount, receives triple bonus for Mastery Harmony. Now, I'm not fully sold on the aspect of having 2 spot healing abilities. You already have Regrowth. I'm leaning more towards increasing the effectiveness of Regrowth or going scenario ward for an additional Mastery Hot, but maybe Nourish is going to be extremely efficient and is going to be used on spot healing scenarios. But again, I'm not sold on having 2 spot heal abilities, but Blizzard is trying to give you an option of it, which I can understand. And overall, the other biggest change is to do with Feral Affinity and Balance Affinity. Balance Affinity now has Typhoon associated with it, and Feral Affinity has Maim associated with it, which was relatively awkward to use. And you also have Heart of the Wild. And these are like one of the biggest changes. Heart of the Wild is going to boost your given affinity. So if I pick Feral Affinity, my Heart of the Wild, damage of your Feral abilities increased by 30% in critical chance or critical strikes with attacks that generate combo points, generate an additional combo points. And you'll get a different bonus if you pick balance affinity. Damage of your balance abilities increased by 30% and Star Surge is instant. And Heart of the Wild is 5 minutes long, but there is a legendary. There is a legendary that's very interesting, especially for Mythic Plus environments, which increase the effects of Thick Hide, Astral Influence, Feral Swiftness, and Ysera's Gift. When you shift into your affinity form, you gain Heart of the Wild for 10 seconds once every 1 minute. This is, in my eyes, extremely engaging in Mythic Plus content. It's probably not going to be used in raids, actually guaranteed not going to be used in raids. But in Mythic Plus, this gives you an additional form of giving you more damage. If you'll notice that Resto Druid legendaries are actually, a lot of them are actually pretty good. But before I go to the legendaries, I want to talk also about the fact that you get Overgrowth, which people are still experimenting with. Again, it used to be a PvP talent, this used to be a PvP talent, so there is not a whole lot of ingenuity coming from Blizzard to really change Resto Druid gameplay. And in Mythic Plus, I agree. I don't think there needs to be a change for Resto Druid in Mythic Plus. I want to talk about Balance Affinity and Feral Affinity. So this is a big topic right now. What's going to be better? In my honest opinion, in terms of gameplay and not talking about the numbers whatsoever, I think Feral Affinity is a little bit more interesting to play in Mythic Plus because it's just easier to apply your bleeds, it's easier to apply your swipes and things like that. It's fast and easy and you can go back to healing. That's my honest opinion about this. Now, what do I feel about the fact of Balance Affinity making a comeback or possibly using Balance Affinity? Balance Affinity is a lot different. Go into my Moonkin form, you'll notice you'll have Rat, it's called Rat now, and Starfire. And you can see there's an icon beside them that says 2. So what that means is that if I cast Rat twice in a row, I'm going to empower my Starfire. It's going to be reduced in cast time and the damage bonus is going to be increased because the damage bonus is arcane damage to a target and 400 arcane damage to all enemies within 5 yards. And that bonus is going to be increased. If I cast my Star Surge during that time, it's going to increase the damage bonus of my Starfire. So you can see that, and if I cast my Starfire twice, it's going to do the same thing to Rat. So right now, let's go to Starfire and we'll cast Starfire twice. So once, twice, and now my Rat is going to be empowered. And now my Rat casting time reduced by 8% and damage increased by 20. If I cast my Star Surge, my damage percentage is going to go from 20 to 24. So you can see that there's going to be this 1-1 empower this, 1-1 empower other. And you use your Star Surge to kind of increase the damage bonus of it. Now this has changed quite a few times. It used to be the extends the duration of it and things like that. So I'm not sure if it's going to go live like this, but it's definitely very different. And also, if you use Heart of the Wild while you're in your Moonkin form, or if you have Balance Affinity, this is going to increase the damage of your Moonfire and Sunfire. So Moonfire and Sunfire, I guess they're classified as your Balance Affinity spells, and the damage is increased for them if you use Heart of the Wild. And this has been like that for quite a while. So generally speaking, which one is going to be better? I have no idea at this point. I think I prefer Feral Affinity, but if you really hate melee or if you have no chance of going into melee, maybe Balance Affinity make a comeback. And honestly, I'm not going to be opposed to that. Besides the affinity changes, there's been a couple of alterations to some of the spells. Ironbark duration has been increased, but the Stonebark talent has been baked into Ironbark. And all of a sudden it's a little bit different. You'll also notice that you get things like Cyclone. You also get things like Nature Swiftness on 1 minute cooldown, which is going to make your next Regrowth, Rebirth, or Entangling Roots instant, which is quite, again, it's quite interesting in terms of like, oh crap, I need to heal straight away type of deal. So generally speaking, how do I feel about Resto Druid, Covenant, and Legendary choices? Now in terms of Covenants, Convoke the Spirit has been, this is the Night Fae ability, and it's probably been the most popular choice for Resto Druids for most of the beta so far. This has been nerfed like yesterday or a couple of days ago. So calls upon Night Fae to for an eruption of energy channeling rapid flurry of 12 Druid spells. This used to be 16. The Druid spells, you'll cast Wildgrowth, Swiftmend, Moonfire, Raspberry Growth, Rejuvenation, and Trash and on appropriate nearby targets, favoring your current shapeshift form. This is relatively messy for a long time. Like for example, there's been weird interactions with it. Like if you go Soul the Forest, if you cast this ability, if you cast Convoke the Spirit, there's a chance that you're going to be casting Swiftmend, activating Soul the Forest, and then maybe casting Wildgrowth, and it's going to be an empowered Wildgrowth during the whole thing. So if I try and press it right now, it's going to cast a lot of different abilities. You can see my Soul of the Forest got activated a couple of times. I even casted Wrath on an enemy and things like that. This ability, I'll be completely honest with you, a lot of people have been... There's been a lot of bugs with it, but generally speaking, it's been extremely strong. And a lot of people, a lot of Resto Druids would use Convoke the Spirits for raids and Mythic Plus. It has been nerfed and it's still looking to be like the choice or the go-to choice for Resto Druids. Adaptive Swarm, which used to be Necrolord ability, which used to send out these dots that could be applied or increasing your hot potential or your bleeds or your damage potential and things like that, has been nerfed both type of deals. So I'm not sure if it's still going to be up there, but I feel Adaptive Swarm from Necrolords is a little bit more interesting because it's a shorter cooldown. But generally speaking, Convoke the Spirit has been the go-to. Keep in mind, anything can change because Blizzard is always making changes there. In terms of legendaries, there's honestly so many decent legendaries when you compare to something like a Holy Paladin, which I did a video a couple of days ago. You have things like your damage overtime effects deal their damage in 25% less time, and your healing overtime effects in 15 less time. This legendary is looking to be like something that's going to be relatively decent in the Mythic Plus situations where you want your damage to be applied quicker type of deal. We'll see if this is going to make a comeback in raids. I don't think so at the moment because mana is definitely an issue in raid situations. You also have things like, and I feel this is going to be one of your best legendaries, at least if they're not changing it or if they're not nerfing it at this point. And I'm talking about raids and Mythic Plus, where you have double Life Bloom. And this double Life Bloom actually works with photosynthesis, which was kind of insane. So if you have Life Bloom on your tank and if you have Life Bloom on yourself, not only are you increasing the single target healing that you get on your tank, but you're also making your HOTS basically heal 20% faster because of your photosynthesis. While your Life Bloom is on yourself, your periodic heals heal 20% faster, which is insane in my opinion. So this legendary is looking extremely strong right now. You also have things like, again, this is more of a raid legendary. Every 45 seconds while in combat, you cast a spell based on your form, which is going to be, again, it's going to be wild growth for most of the time as Resto Druid. This is looking to be alright in raids. You also have your, again, the DPS legendary that I mentioned, Heart of the Wild, probably only in Mythic Plus and only if you can sacrifice the HPS bonus from something like the Dark Titans lesson, the double Life Bloom legendary for sure. So if you want the DPS, Heart of the Wild one could be strong. And then you also have the Swiftmend, no longer consumes a heal overtime effect and extends the duration of your heal overtime effects on that target. Now the Swiftmend legendary is a little bit weird because Swiftmend by default requires a regrowth, wild growth or rejuve on a person to be active. And even though this legendary doesn't consume the heal overtime effect, it still requires that effect to be available. So if I equip it right now and if I try to cast Swiftmend on myself, it doesn't let me. If I put Rejuve on myself and if I cast my Swiftmend, it doesn't consume Rejuve, but it does, and it lets me cast it. So it's a weird interaction, but it's still looking like a decent legendary. So if you look at Resto Druid right now in terms of legendaries, there's a lot of choices. There's a lot of very decent choices, and they can change and shift, get buffed, nerfed throughout the whole content. But my general consensus of how Resto Druid feels in raids and Mythic Plus situations. I honestly consider to this day Resto Druid to be one of the most fun healers in Mythic Plus content. I think is an extremely fun healer. I think the way that dots, hots, bleeds, everything interact is insanely fun. I think because mastery is such a big part of Resto Druid healing and it's still unchanged, you still have insane utility. You have battle res because you remember engineering battle res is probably not making a comeback in Shadowlands. Bringing a healer with battle res is going to be probably insanely strong. So keep that in mind. I feel that at least in Mythic Plus scenarios, Resto Druid is looking pretty safe. I think if there's one healer that's guaranteed to be somewhere close to the top in terms of performance in Mythic Plus, it's going to be Resto Druid. You still have an insane utility. You're getting things like Stampeding Roar. You're getting things like Cyclone. I know you might be losing Typhoon if you're not speccing into Balance Affinity, but you're getting Maim if you're speccing into... Maim is a lot more awkward to use though. So there is still a lot of things that Resto Druid brings. And I feel they're going to be very strong in Mythic Plus. In raid situations, honestly, I have no idea at this given point. I still feel they don't provide enough utility when you compare it to other healers that have damage reduction, passive DPS and things like that. So I hope that Resto Druids are going to be really strong, maybe into single target with double Life Bloom, or maybe they're going to provide a huge amount of HPS. There are a couple of boss fights where healing on the move is quite important, especially the last boss and things like that, but I doubt that Resto Druid unless they have really strong HPS, unless they have really strong a niche, boss niche or something along those lines, if they're going to be mandatory for raids. Like I mentioned, raid balance is still looking somewhat similar to BFA, where you have healers that provide damage reduction, healers that provide passive DPS are still looking to be like cementing their spot, and all the other healers that are considered to be HPS healers, it's all going to be depending on the balancing. Are they going to be doing a ton of HPS? Is there going to be a fight with this ton of healing on the move type of deal? So Resto Druid, in my eyes, one of the most fun and one of the strongest healers in Mythic Plus. In raid situations, it's up to debate, and it's based on the balancing that Blizzard is going to decide. So I'm not sure about the raids, but if you enjoy Resto Druid in BFA, you'll most likely like Resto Druid in Shadowlands. Let me know how you feel about this video, and if you're going to main Resto Druid, let me know, guys, and I'll see you in my next guide.